All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Climb, the StarCraft II podcast focused on the blue collar, below Master League players. I, of course, am your host, Lord Cranial, aka Will.
Hello, my name is Dan. I go by Captain Hoppa, and each episode we will dive into the ups and downs of the Diamond Ladder experience while searching for the secrets to get good.
Yeah, we're just two normal players who are working to climb to that next rung on the ladder, and we hope you enjoy the discussion tonight.
So, today's topic, we will be discussing ladder anxiety and how it can affect your experience in 1v1. But before we get to this very juicy, wonderful topic, I have a very important question to ask you, and it is this: how's the ladder treating you?
Bad.
Fair,
um,
fair enough.
so yeah, I've been struggling a good bit, and there's kind of a reason for it. I haven't been practicing as much recently. I've been kind
Mhm.
of dipping back and forth between a bunch of different projects that I've been working on, so I've been getting like just a little bit of rust. Spending just a couple of days away from StarCraft and then going on a hard grind, which for anybody who is, practice anything, that's usually not the way you want to do it because you do kind of it's better to have like smaller sessions but very close together rather than having like a big session and then taking a long break and constantly doing that because you lose some of that. But yeah, I've been kind of struggling with that recently.
And so, like, do you feel like it's mostly like mechanical mistakes, or do you feel like it's decision making, or do you have anything that, or just kind of all of the above, or what?
It really feels like mechanical mistakes. I mean, granted, I do make a lot of decision errors, but I do feel like it's a bit more mechanical. Um,
Sure.
I haven't really been, microing my units the way I really intend to. I'll like set a drop out and then kind of forget about it for too long and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Terran, the mechanics are always very unforgiving. Um, I mean, and it's really one of these things where you miss one production cycle, it just doesn't delay that one round of units. It delays the next round of units as well, you know?
Yeah.
Um, well, I'm sorry to hear you're struggling. Um, but I mean, do you have a plan for improvement? Like, are there things you're trying to focus on, or are you still just kind of working on shaking the rust off? Because I know that's its own thing usually too.
So my primary concern right now is to kind of get my mentality back in check because I was getting like if anybody watched my stream last night, I was getting incredibly frustrated with ladder. Like just it almost started getting to levels of artosis and I went back and watched some of it. I'm like, "Oh no. What are you talking about right now? You're whining about lurkers. You're good against lurkers. I don't understand what stop it. Shut up." But I don't know. That's the primary thing I need to work on. I need to go back and cuz do some mental exercises that I was working on previously that I kind of let slip. And then after that, I kind of want to ease back into it just a little bit and go back and kind of rework some of my mechanics and probably a little bit of decision making. I know some people in GSL have been helping me out a lot with stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I know for me, it's like when it's a rough day, it kind of feels like everything's going wrong,
Oh
like
yeah,
not just one thing, but um, that's a common situation that I've found myself in as well.
yeah.
Um,
I've been
no,
kind
go
of
ahead.
learning. I have been kind of learning that I need to have a time to like decompress because if you have like a stressful day at work and then you don't give yourself time to breathe and kind of reflect and deal with that stress, and you immediately go into another project or something that you're just going to be more frustrated even with stuff that you love. Like you're going to just be frustrated, just like I don't understand why can't I play this piece of music now, or like all of,
Yeah.
like if you're a woodworker, all of my wood looks like shit. So it's
Yeah.
it's it's one of those things where you have to give yourself time to kind of recuperate, like give yourself a breath, let go of all that stuff that's happened during the day, and kind of go back into like your passion projects with a fresh mindset.
Yeah, I think it's really a lot of the mental stuff too is really a slippery slope, right? And once you kind of get down that road, it can be very hard to, course correct back on the right track. Um, and certainly that's a big part of kind of managing these mental challenges. I know for me, like I try to keep track of like a tilt-o-meter uh as I'm going. So, on a scale of 1 to 100%, 100% I'm tilted off of the face of the earth. And um, there are certain things that work at like 50 to 60%, but they do not work at 80%. Like if
Mm-mm.
if I get it that far, it's a real battle to get it back to a reasonable level. And I've certainly sometimes it just gets the best of you, sometimes it just
Yeah.
runs away from you. And there's a lot of factors to that. And a lot of times it's not even the StarCraft stuff, right? It's the real life stresses and anxieties and all that. um, well, I'm sorry to hear that it's a little rough, but hey, that's kind of why we have this podcast, right?
Yeah, it's part of growing, really. You're going to run across frustrations all the time.
Yeah, and I think it's also, there's a lot to learn there as well, as far as kind of developing these tools and these management strategies. And it's something I've spent a lot of time thinking about too, because there are a million things out there, right? And uh, what works for me might not work for you, and vice versa. And there's no one size fits all solution to avoiding this. And,
Yeah.
one of the things that I think about a lot too is that, like, if it's a really frustrating game, I cannot go into the replay like right after, because I'm too fired up.
Hmm.
And I like to put a little more space between me and the replay. But that's just something I've had to kind of figure out over time. I don't know if you've had an experience like that.
So I actually did RageQ into a replay last night.
Sure.
Usually my rule is I give it a day. Like if I'm
Yeah,
going to
yeah, yeah,
do
yeah.
some actual analysis, give it a day. Let the fires dull down a little bit. But yeah, I rage queued into it. I'm just like, I'm not learning anything from this. Like this was pointless. I'm too fired up to like give actual decent analysis here.
Oh yeah. And like I was saying, if I get to 80%, man, I can play, but if like if one thing goes wrong, I'm
Yeah.
done. I'm out of here. Like, take it. You can have the game. Like, whatever, man. Like, so I totally relate to that. Um
Yeah, definitely. Well, how has the ladder been treating you, man?
oh, are we gonna do individual games? Do you want to do individual games?
Oh yeah, we can do individual games. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Um,
this is we can include this. Like, I like to include this after the, like, I think after the general questions. Um and we're working on the title of this segment, but it's built into the how's the ladder section. But I like highlights and lowlights. So you gotta highlight for me a specific game where you felt like it was going your way.
so what's really funny about that is I uh I had a well after my like the little like rage session, like I took a step back, did some introspection, and I came back and I just kind of had like one quiet game, and it was a TVP on Romanticide. And I was trying to keep in mind like all the stuff that I've been taught, prior to that game about TVP. Like I was trying to keep everything in mind. My build order was going to be crisp. I was going to go in there and I was just going to crush it. And I just bullied this poor Protoss player to death. Like I the 16 Marine drop like got to his base, killed like what feels like a dozen probes, and like for the rest of the game I was just like it seemed like everything I was doing was just perfect. It was perfect.
Oh
Like
yeah.
he tried to go into the like the gateway man style, and I already had ghost out, and I was just like, here's a bunch of EMPs and now I'm going to wipe your army.
Oh yeah. No, that's fantastic. Well, and I know you've been kind of working on your TVP a decent amount recently, right? Is that still part of it? And I know it's a challenging matchup, but I'm glad you had one where, you're in the driver's seat.
Yeah, it's really satisfying to, suddenly just be crushing Protoss players.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like you were one step ahead too as well.
Oh yeah, it was it like it felt very powerful, honestly. Like when I was done with that game, I'm just like, I cannot believe I just did that.
That's good, man. That's good. I mean, it's, I think it's we always gotta you gotta celebrate the wins, and you gotta pat yourself on the back. And even if you're spending all day eating shit on the ladder, it's
Yeah.
hopefully there's a nugget of something good in there, and that's good. I'm glad to hear. Do you have a low light? Do you have a game that uh was a blunder, mayhaps?
Yeah, I haven't gone back and analyzed this game yet personally because this is probably what started my tilt streak.
Sure.
But it was a TVZ. Um like I felt like I was ahead all game. Like I was constantly in the Zerg's face. I was going in. I was just like, killing off creep tumors. I killed off his third base. Um, and he was kind of doing the like the mass ling style, where like kind of a low drone count, but just kind of like constantly building lings and banes to just try like push you back and then flood into your base.
Uh-huh.
And I thought for sure, like I have got like I was struggling, but at some point I was just like, yeah, I got this guy on the ropes. I'm going to kill him now. And then suddenly lurkers popped out. I was just like, or no, I'm sorry. The Hydra started popping out, and I'm just like, that's okay. I just get tanks. The lurkers are incoming. I'll just prepare for that. So I was preparing for that, and I thought I was ahead, and then he just came across the map and steamrolled me from out of nowhere, and I'm just like, what the hell just actually happened?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's always the worst when you're in the driver's seat for most of it, and then one thing, it's usually one thing. Sometimes it's two things, but just that one series of events that really destroys. But it sounds like you were pretty comfortable in the early phases of that game. You felt like you were in control.
I wouldn't say comfortable, but I felt like I was playing really well. Like this guy felt like he was, like 200 mmr ahead of me, but I felt like I was in the zone and I was still like going toe to toe with him. I was starting to beat him back, feeling good about that.
So were you like holding on, or were you like actually shutting it down, or is it
I
kind of hard
mean,
to say?
it felt like I was shutting it down.
Yeah.
Like there were times when he would try to set up like like ling backstabs, and I would just like catch him doing it and then just like kill off all the zerglings. I mean, like it was definitely toe to toe, but I felt like I had the edge in that situation.
Yeah. And then you said he basically got a big army and then just walked on top of you. Is that how it concluded?
It it wasn't even a big army. It was just the lurkers, and he got on top of my tanks quickly.
Yes, that will happen. Uh,
Yeah, it was one of those things where it felt like, and like again, I hadn't gone back and watched the replay yet. So maybe it's all in my head. Maybe I was behind all game and just thought I was ahead. It's one of those
yeah.
games that I definitely need to go back and watch.
Yeah. Well, and just like tanks, like lurkers in an inconvenient spot will just ruin your entire day. It doesn't really matter necessarily what's happened leading up to that. If they're in there, they are
Yeah.
in there. And I feel the same way sometimes when it's like 8 tanks, but um, so even though you haven't really watched the replay, what would you try to change? Do you have any ideas? Like
For
what would
start
you say was like what would you say is like this is the big like critical whoopsie daisy?
so for starters, I would probably go back and take back some of the things I said about opponent.
Hey, that's a good start.
Yeah,
That's a good start to recognize that.
yeah, I mean, I probably said something stupid about lurkers, and I would go
Sure.
back and take that back because it's not
Sure.
true.
Yeah,
But
well, it happens.
I don't know. I think part of it maybe I need to start slowing down my game plan when it comes to lurkers. Like, oh gosh, it's well, actually no, I have it. So usually whenever it's like this mass Ling Bane ball,
Hmm.
like the like the two prong pressure, you have to you have to control that better because it's a lot of lings, it's a lot of banelings, and he's doing it off of a lower economy. So I need to get better about being able to control those and knowing like when to disengage and when to engage.
Yeah.
And then maybe not let the lurkers jump on top of my tanks as quickly. That would be a good one. But I mean, outside of, not seeing the replay, I'd have to like I really would have to look at the replay to know for a fact like what I did wrong. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because because the only I mean the only memory I have was just the emotionally charged moments of it.
Yeah, well, and I think too that like the emotional weight of the events that are occurring is usually a pretty like it's like one of those things where like you know how like when you have adrenaline like your memories are like firmer like they're more
Yeah.
rooted in like it's totally that kind of thing where it's like yeah I was just concerned about the fight in front of me or the fact that I was on the edge of death and it's really hard to kind of find a way to alleviate this emotional feelings. But it's also like StarCraft is a very emotional game, and like it's hilarious to me when I watch my own stream sometimes because I am articulating how I am feeling like out loud. So like I know like oh I'm afraid here, oh I'm confident here, oh I'm angry here, like but it's still always a challenge just because there's usually so many things happening at once.
Yeah.
Um, but this is also something I like to do is before I even look at the replay, I just try to see what I can remember and whether or not like my instincts on what I think the mistake is and what the actual mistake is. So that's why I wanted to ask you that. I always think it's interesting too, and I think it's also like the ability to like summarize a game, like win or loss. I think is really like it's good for like deducing these critical moments, right? Because there's 100 different things that happen, and finding these critical points is really something. So it seems like you have a good idea. I'm sure you'll uncover some more wisdom in the replay, but it happens.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I will. So, yeah, let me go ahead and flip the question back to you. How's the ladder been treating you, man?
Sure thing. Not too bad. I feel like I'm gonna start all of them saying not too bad, but it's just how I kind of feel about the ladder in general. Like it's ups and downs. I my MMR has recovered a little bit since the last time we talked. So I'm sitting more at like 3.8 ish,
Oh,
which I'm proud. Like I
yeah,
I want to tell people I'm 3.8. I don't want to tell people I'm 3.6, but it means nothing. But like I feel good that I click the screen and I see the number, right?
yeah,
That's again, this is a whole nother episode, but like it's definitely something I'm aware of. So I think the games have been going pretty well. Um, I don't remember if I said this last week or 2 weeks ago, but I've been getting a lot of Protosses who like Robo stuff, and that's great for me.
yeah,
Because if they're doing robo builds or sentry pushes or gateway man, it's like, yeah, just know that it's coming and make a lot of roaches. And for me, I'm like, yeah, I make roaches every day. So it's well within my comfort zone. I don't need to do anything fancy. I just need to see it and prepare for it. And it's not a big deal. And even there was even a ZVP where I knew it was an all in and I was ready for it. I just my unit comp was wrong, and I'm like, oh well, I guess I die here. But hey, we were prepared. But you know that kind of stuff happens. But oh, the other thing is I've been playing more people like in the 3.9 4K range, especially like in the last 2 days. I've been playing like, you know, I don't know until the game's over, but I'm like, oh, he was 4K. Wow, that okay. And you know, it's just a different sensation, you know,
Yeah.
and everything's a little tighter, and you can't really punish certain things, or they punish you for certain things. It's it's one of these things where it just everything just feels better out of my opponent, and it's a great learning experience, but it's also like, yeah, I'm just I can't get away with this.
Yeah.
You know, I might have been able to get away with this situation before, but I cannot versus this opponent. So you know, it's refreshing, but it's also, you know, you lose.
Yeah. So you said that you really felt like um you felt more in control of your games. Do you think that was more of a switch of meta, or do you think it's something that you're doing better?
Um, I don't know. Honestly, lately I feel like it's just been the choices that my opponents make. You know, like I still feel like I'm playing pretty okay. Like I haven't changed anything drastic as far as like my builds or my strategies or anything. Um, but like it's certain things too. Like in ZVZ, I always open up with like a handful of lings and a couple of banes to pressure. Like that's just how I open, and I like the map control, and I like to keep my opponent on their toes. But sometimes if they are greedy and they go to 35 drones with no baneling nest, I just win the game. And it's the same pressure I do in pretty much every ZVZ, but every once in a while, I win a game off of it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I get a couple of those. Sometimes the same thing happens in ZVT where it's like, yeah, I kind of just do a lot of eco damage early, and I'm very well versed in playing these ZVTs from an ahead position, especially with like the Roach style, just kind of fighting and forcing the issue and getting in his face, and they will never land a third base. You know, like I'm very in control in those situations as long as I can get there. And you know, it's felt pretty crisp, man. I've had some pretty good ZVTs that I've been pretty happy with, and uh, ZVP is still consistently pretty frustrating for me. But again, I've been running into a lot of Robo Twilight stuff, so yeah, come at me, bro. And you know, it's it's going okay.
Yeah, it kind of in that same topic, whenever we play, I've noticed that it does really seem like you've become a lot crisper with your timings and you hit with a lot more stuff. Like it felt like before we were fairly even and it was a good back and forth, but recently it's just been like I can't hold my third base anymore. I don't I don't know what's happening now. Yeah,
I'm
so
flattered. I'm flattered you say that because that's the true Sue way. Show up with more units than your opponent expects, and keep fighting.
yeah, and yeah, I mean it's not only that, but also your Ravager control has become much better. Like my tanks disappear and I don't know what happened to them. They just kind of never existed in the first place. Yeah, I think you're probably running some kind of like chronal distortion on every map. But
Yeah.
yeah, man, it's good to see that you're getting into a really good groove and climbing up on the ladder. Um I mean, is there anything in particular that you're struggling with though? It's like I know ZVP tends to be your it tends
Not,
to
I
be a
mean,
frustrating thing for
yeah.
you.
ZVP is definitely a struggle, but I'm trying to kind of keep it simple as far as what I'm focusing on in ZVP. So I'm still kind of working on hitting like crisp queen walk timings, or just like even if I'm not doing something like that, just ruling out scouting information, because that's a big way to die in ZVP, is if you're not scouting enough, you're just dead. Like there's some things you can be surprised with and you can kind of wiggle your way out of it, but for the most part, if you don't know what your opponent's doing, you're gonna have a bad time. So even though I'm still doing the timings, I'm still trying to do it from a place of I have the information to make the call, whether or not it's like it's still not might not be the best call, but it's a call I'm making based on the information I have, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and it's I really enjoy ZVT. I think it's also like one of my best. It's definitely my best matchup right now. But I also feel like stylistically, I'm very comfortable with what I can do in ZVT and what my opponent can do in response to that, right? So like I don't play Terran, but I kid you not, I could look at a lot of Diamond players. Like if you're a Diamond Terran who dies to roaches, let me look at your replay, because I guarantee you I could tell you stuff about positioning and awareness and just decision make fight taking choices and stuff like that. Like I'm very comfortable in those. Even to the point where like I get a lot of Terrans who take fights versus Roach Ravager where they commit to the fight, and before the fight has started, I'm like, Are you sure you want to do this? All right, okay, here we go. I go right ahead." Like, because I've watched these fights, Roach Rav, pure Roach Rav versus Bio, right? It's not an ideal situation, but I've been in enough of those fights to where I feel like I have a really good judgment, and it's relatively snappy as far as making those calls, and those calls have to be pretty quick, otherwise your army could die in a blink of an eye. But yeah, man, I don't know.
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm gonna go ahead and send you a couple of replays here
Sure,
real
man.
quick.
Yeah. Go for it. Go for it. It's all about the fights. It's all about the fights. It's all about the tanks. And it's I'd be happy to look at them.
So you're just sticking with Roach Ravager for right now, and ZVT and ZVP. No extra things that you've been trying out.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of been dipping my toes a little bit in the like ZVP Ling Hydra Lurker stuff. But I don't know. It's one of these things where it's like it's really shifting the rhythm of the game for me when I go for these different kinds of comps, because like, excuse me, because in order to get like lurkers out, it's like you need a 4 base economy, right? And I'm like, for my whole climb to diamond, I'm a 55 drone guy. Like I go beyond it now, but like getting to like diamond 3, I literally just made 55 drones every game. Like 55 drones, 5 gas, let's party. Like that's it. Very simple, very straightforward, but it's focused on making a lot of stuff, right? Um, and so the thing I'm realizing when I'm going for these more lurker hive tech kind of focus is that it's just game situations that I'm not as well versed in, right? Like having a 4 base defensive setup is very different from having a 3 base defensive setup, right? Especially when you have a Protoss who has freedom on the map and they can send charge lots here, there. You got to really set yourself on the exterior corners and then still keep your army here and still keep an eye on his army. And it's just a shift of priorities. So like I'm still kind of working on that, but not as intently as I was. But I mean, I should learn it. Like like I need to learn it. Like I'm aware of this.
Yeah, I definitely know what you mean by the like 3 base defense is definitely different from 4 base, because if you're Terran and you're on 3 bases, like you're just taking a triangle third, your tanks are in a very solid line. But if the moment you take a fourth, it's like they're going to get spread out, and you have to have better awareness of where your opponent is. So yeah, I definitely understand where that's coming from. Yeah, but anything else from your ladder experience you want to share? Any lowlights, highlights, maybe?
Oh yeah, I got the low light highlight games picked out.
Oh, do
They're
you?
from they're from a couple days ago, but they have been burned into my memory. I mean, mainly the low light one. The other one is still pretty good. We'll start. We'll start with the good one. How about the good one?
Yeah.
Um, so this is a mech. This was a mech game. I don't really remember what map it was on. But it's a mech game, right? And as a Zerg who faces mech, it's there's a lot of things you like. Once you detect it as mech, you have to do a number of things. It's like my mech protocol checklist. Like okay, it's mech. Like strap in. I'll try to take a fourth base. I'll try to get to beyond 70 drones really quickly, and then just try to kind of go out on the map and fight a lot and try to work my way to vipers in a hive. That's kind of the gist of it. But um, you definitely have to do a pretty aware gear shift if you realize it's mech, because otherwise it's really just not going to work out for you. Um, so this mech game, it was fantastic. I felt like I had great control of my opponent's positioning, um, and the fights I were taking were very good. We kept denying outside bases. Maybe we pick off a couple tanks, but we still kept most of that army alive, right? And one of the things that is very common for me in mech is that so like this is built into the strategy, right? The strategy is like, okay, I can fight really hard because I have a bigger economy, right? So I can take some really aggressive fights to deny these expansions from my opponent. But if you're too much on that side, you obliterate your entire army, and then they just lift every tank and siege right outside your third, and like you're pretty dead, right?
Yeah. Preach.
So keeping the army alive is something that I was very happy to do and be able to uh, keep keep being a menace out on the map and really just making it um, challenging for my opponent. It's one of these things too where like when when he's expanding or where his tanks are set up, it's really it's not that bad, right? If you have a couple hero changelings in there just to see where he is or where he isn't, it's a very nice sensation, and the driver's seat feeling is very strong. So I felt really good about that. And then the last thing I did in this game is I actually won the game with Broodlords, which is very different for me. I am very vocal about how I do not enjoy making Broodlords, uh, mainly because they're slow and I have a tendency to not protect them and they die. But it's the speed, really. It's a change in the tempo of how I've been playing to once the Broodlords are out. It's different feel to it. Um, but we took such great fights. We had such good, you know, an army lead. I was like, hey, I'm gonna make some broods to close it out. Um, and the reason I'm really happy I did this is because I played a game probably a week and a half before this versus Brad, I think it was, where um, I was ludicrously far ahead. Uh, and so his only strategy was to turtle up, mass tank, and just slowly crank out that tank count. And I lost that game. And you know, I was being very stubborn in that game. I remember it very clearly. I was being very stubborn in that game because I was determined to make it work with Roach Ravager Viper because I was trying to get the Viper practice in. But looking at the replay, I was like, I could have made two Broodlords and won the entire game. So this more recent game, I was happy just to see that I could do it at all. And yeah, I probably could have had a little more air support for them, but I made Broodlords, they showed up, and I won. So I was very happy about that.
Yeah, that's actually awesome. I have a similar story, Brad related, where because he does the mass tank Viking style, and it actually taught me how to just wreck mech players sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting to hear you're using brood lords now, but
Oh, I mean, it's very situational. Let's not get
yeah,
too carried away.
yeah,
It's very situational, and in my eyes, I'm only gonna do it if it's really, really tank heavy, and like if I'm in a very confident economic spot. Because honestly, in the past, I've made Broodlords, and then I lose them all to like four Vikings, and I'm like, Well, there goes 1800 gas. So I still like the more ground heavy Viper support kind of stuff, but I'm glad I could do it because honestly, it's been like a year since I've even tried to like make a Greater Spire. So, um, hey, you gotta work your way around the tech tree. So I was very happy with that one. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome to hear, dude.
thank you. I'll give you my low light too. It's another mech game. So this uh so this is another mech game. I think it was on Oxide, which is already just a bad start for me. Like, like I didn't know it was gonna be mech, but like ZVT on Oxide is pretty brutal. Like I just there's a lot of gnarly tank positions, and the third base setup is very tough to break. And as someone who likes to really attack into third bases, it's a challenge. So I'm already I'm already sweating a little bit to start. Um, but anyways, the mech game kind of plays out pretty well. I feel pretty good about my spot. Same kind of deal. We hit all the mech switches, and the mech protocol has been engaged. And I have a good army, and I'm poking around the map and all that. And I win a couple fights. I push back a base or two. Things are going great. And he basically has no army. I think my opponent had maybe a couple questionable choices about the unit comp. Like it was a weird like amount of cyclones, but I was still fighting and winning and feeling good about it. Um, to the point where I win a fight. Like it's one of these fights where you take it just to see how it'll go, and then I'm like, oh, I crushed this fight. Like, I was thinking maybe I'd pull back when reinforcements show up, but I just crushed it. So I'm like, all right, well, let's go up to the natural. Let's go to the production. Like we're right here. So I make my way up the ramp. I am destroying the factories. I have killed the natural. Biles and roaches everywhere. I'm feeling great. I'm feeling like my opponent is being salty. And then I get there just in time for three battle cruisers to pop out of three Tech Lab starports. Um, and uh, I'm like, okay, it's some BCs. All right, we'll put down the Spire, whatever. But we're killing the factories, so I still feel like I'm in a pretty good spot. And I also know that he basically has no economy. Um, but basically, he decides to leave the roaches where they are. He gets a couple more BCs to pop out of the starports, and then the three warp across to the other side. And the next 5 minutes, maybe 4 minutes, hard to say exactly, is me trying to get my Spire to finish and the battle cruisers killing it as they slowly drift along in their battle cruiser fashion, just killing it. I did like the first Spire I made did manage to get up, but I made like 8 corruptors, and again, it's already like 5 battle cruisers, right? So like I needed quite a few more, and then I've already lost some mining bases to the BCs at this point. Um, and then my like props to my opponent because he knew the win condition is killing the Spire, and he did a really good job of finding it. Like I I, I kid you not, man. I made like 3 Spires, um, and like one after the other, one after it died. I'd put one in a pocket somewhere, or I'd put it at my fourth base, which was like the furthest away. But he still found it. He still kept killing it, and I just there was even kind of the back and forth where it's like I have all these roaches and the BCs are killing my shit, so I'm like, let's go cross again, I guess, like just to pull the BCs back. But the damage had been done. He had like 2-1 on the air already, so I just could not believe that I was losing this game because again, I felt like I was in control for about 90% of it, and I missed the BC switch, and I well played.
Yeah, man, that's rough. I've I don't play Zerg very often, but I've definitely been in that situation where you're crushing a mech player and they switch into BCs and you're just like, oh, I guess I just die now.
Yeah, and it's
So,
one of those things too. Like one BC, whatever, who cares? 3 BCs, 6 BCs, that's a problem. That's a problem that requires a very specific solution. And Um, I don't know if you know this, but a spire takes about 35 minutes to finish building. It's the slowest Zerg building in existence. And boy, was I feeling it that game. Just, you're just staring at your building, waiting for it to finish. Because I know that's the only thing that can save me. Like I had a couple of queens, but they three BCs, like they don't do anything. They just die.
Yeah,
So brutal.
I find it funny because for me it's always like I'm either waiting on a spire or I'm waiting on a lurker den. It's those are two
Oh
buildings that
yeah.
just never finish.
Oh yeah.
Apologies, 1 second. I think my dog kicked my door open.
Yeah. No worries.
Sorry about that. Well, that yeah, the BC switch. That's a real killer.
Yeah, and it's also just one of these things too where it's like, yeah, that's the one thing that'll kill me. Like I don't even have a hydrogen. Like
Yeah,
it's it'll get me. And again, it's also sometimes for me it's like a confidence thing where it's like I'm so confident that I'm gonna win this game. Like I can see the finish line in front of me, right? Like I can see it, I can taste it. And then it's like the one thing that completely wrecks everything I have is warping into my base, and I'm like, okay, cool, 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 cool.
yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where after a while you kind of start to like pick up on stuff like that. It's just like, well, the only thing that could kill me right now is a BC switch. These past, 5 Terrans have done this to me. So you know what? Just to be safe, I'm gonna set that spire down. And oh yeah, BCs already have 15 corruptors. Not a
Yeah.
problem.
Oh yeah. And I mean, and in retrospect, with the replay and everything, it's like, yeah, I just should have. Like, it was also one of these things too, where like I remember clearing his ground army and being like, oh, that was pretty easy. Like, where's his stuff? Like, why
Oh,
why was
that's the
that fight?
worst feeling.
Why was this fight so easy? And I'm like, oh, I guess he just slipped up on production or something. And then it's like, no, he has like thousands of resources building PCs right now that are finishing right at this moment. And I'm like, oh, that's why that fight was so easy for me to win. But yeah, I mean, looking back on it, I just need to be aware of it. I need to see the base, and follow up scout is a pretty common problem for me. And even just blindly getting a spire, who cares? 200, 200. It's okay. I had money. Like,
Yeah. Anything else from your recent ladder escapades?
no, I don't think so. Those are the two that really jumped out at me, and I felt like I had to share with the world. So I'm glad. I'm glad we could. I also just like this. I like this idea of talking about our blunders because
Oh, 100%.
everyone throws games. You know, like you're gonna throw some games, and you're gonna throw from some pretty uh, overwhelming positions for sure. So I'm glad we can have this chat.
Yeah, it also kind of, relieves the pressure from, it's not like we're hiding it away or anything. It's just like, yeah, we mess up too. It's the point of the show. We're the blue collar people of StarCraft II.
Yes, yes, it's very embarrassing, but
Yeah,
it happens, and it
it
will
happens
happen
to all
again.
of us. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot to say this. The game that I played versus Brad a while ago, it was hilarious because Brad, being such a nice guy, he was like he DM'd me after. He was like, "Hey man, sorry I played that style versus you," and I was like, "No worries, you you won't be the last to do that." And those are very valid. Those are very valid plays from the position you were in. So don't feel bad about it. But yep,
Yeah. Brad's a fantastic guy.
yeah, really nice guy.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and hop into the topic of tonight, and tonight is going to be all about ladder anxiety. Now, this is something that's going to trip up a lot of newer players. And if you were to look at my match history, I played 50 games of Heart of the Swarm and I started in 2013. That's how scared of the ladder I was. Um
Yeah,
I'm still scared of the ladder to this day. Sometimes I'll sit down and I'll like look at that ranked button and then just no, I'm not gonna do it. I'll pull up a YouTube video or something. But yeah, so that's gonna
Yeah.
be the topic of tonight. Dan, you have anything that you want to start us off with?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a pretty like again, just like this topic was like the first one on our list of topics that we have.
It
So it's
was,
just
yeah.
like yeah, I mean, like this is a concept that like everyone's kind of dealt with, I feel like. And even if you dealt with it like way back in the past and you don't deal with it right now, it's still something that I think a lot of people are aware of. And I also think um it's one of the biggest barriers, to new players or to players who maybe played in the past or are looking to get back into it. It is a huge barrier, and I know that like other people in the scene, like they get a lot of requests for people to like talk about this, and it's certainly something that uh, it feels pretty universal, because it's scary.
I mean,
The
it
ladder
really
is
is.
scary.
It really is. Like when you sit down and you start laddering, you don't know what you're going to be facing. You're faced with a great unknown. You could be facing a Terran, a Protoss, a Zerg. They could cheese you. They could go into an ultra late macro game. Could be an all in at 7 minutes. I mean, it could be an all in at 10 minutes. Like it's a vast unknown that you are stepping into, and that can be a bit intimidating.
Yeah. Do you remember any of your like specific feel thoughts and feelings like back when you were playing those 50 games?
Yeah. So a lot of the times when I sat down, like I loved playing the campaign. I loved looking or like playing like little customs, in between classes when I was going to college. But for some reason every time I sat down I looked at that ranked button, I was just like sometimes it like the fear would actually grip you. And it's weird because it's not really associated with any one thing other than that ranked button. But when I think back on it, it was like I was thinking I'm going to lose. And losing is kind of the same thing as failure. So I don't know if I want to face failure right now. Like I'm already stressed out about a lot of things. Like I've got exams coming up, or I have projects, or just a bunch of different things that kind of wind it just like I would just wound up being stressed and fearful of the ranked button, and even the
Yeah.
unranked button. Like the thought that like anything could happen and I could just fail outright scared me.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's pretty normal too. Is like it's this weird combination of like fear of the unknown and also this fear of failure because both of those things can happen at once, like it can be unknown and lead to failure. And it's I'll be honest, ladder anxiety is not something I deal with very much a lot these days. Just because I feel like I've had a lot of games under my belt, and also because I stream and I have to play, like I have an external force being like, yeah, you probably should play some more games. Like, um, but that's something. But I definitely remember when I was starting out, having these thoughts and feelings, way before I streamed or anything like that. And it's just like that button, that one button, it's it's exhilarating, but it's also terrifying, you know. And that's something I've kind of learned to embrace, where I kind of have learned to embrace the fact that uh this game can play out in millions of different ways, and I am just going to strap in and go for the ride and see where it takes me, right? But when you don't have that kind of experience, or even just repetitions of hatch, gas, pool, whatever basic opener, it's really hard to have that. um and it's also one of these things too, where occasionally I get people who um, they want to play, right? They want to ladder and improve. They probably enjoy watching the game, or they might enjoy 2v2s or something like that, but they really don't know where to start, with this ladder anxiety. And um, it's one of these things I try my best to really just when I address this, I like. Here's the thing. For me, what got me over ladder anxiety is playing a lot of games, right? But if you say that to a new player who's nervous to play any amount of games, I feel like it's a little dismissive sometimes, despite it being like what I believe. Like, yeah, you gotta play games, you know. But I definitely acknowledge that it's intimidating, man. Like
Oh yeah.
that button is scary, man. So like, it's one of those things that I try to. If you click that button at all, like, good job. Like clicking the matchmaking button at any amount in any frequency is an accomplishment, you know? And I think the more you kind of embrace the fact that you don't know what's going to happen, I think the more you can kind of work off of that.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Um, yeah, so a lot of the time, like you said, a lot of, veterans are just going to tell new players like, "Oh yeah, you just play a bunch of games and the ladder anxiety goes away." I've always been hesitant to s- to tell new players that because like, I've played a couple thousand games at this point and I still every once in a while get ladder anxiety. Like it's not something that it's something that lessens over time rather than goes away entirely.
yeah,
So you kind of what I like to tell new players is that you need to kind of you need to have a different mindset as to what that ranked button represents. So like for me, initially it was like there's a fear of failure and there's a fear of the unknown. What you could do is make it more of like a challenge. Like you're going out there and you're testing yourself now. Like they're going to throw a random scenario at you and you're going to see if you can topple that scenario. Um Whenever it comes to I lost my entire train of thought. Hang on. Whenever yeah, so the fear okay, here it is. The fear of failure, like that's just kind of part of getting better at the game. Like when you queue up your first couple of games, you're going to lose. Like that's almost a given.
yes,
Like you're going I think I lost like my first 5 or 6 games before I actually managed to win one. And that was a fantastic moment. That's a high I wish I could chase forever. But you know, it's also another thing where like the ladder takes some time to kind of figure out where to put you in the game.
yeah,
So like you're going to lose a couple of times until you find players that are more your level, and then that kind of takes a little bit of that unknown out of the equation. So now it's a little bit less of an unknown. It's like it could be a Terran, Protoss, or Zerg, but they're going to be my level. They're going
yeah,
to be some that I can potentially beat. There's a 50-50 chance, theoretically. There's some variance in there, but it really does come down to just figuring out a good mindset for when you click that ranked button. Like you could be fearful and just like, you know, never wind up clicking it, or you could see it as an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to challenge yourself, and then you start clicking it more and more and more and more and
yeah.
trying to, challenge yourself more.
Yeah, I really like what you said about like it's kind of a test. Like it's kind of like the exam phase, right? Of like your preparation, right? And for me, like I mean, I still do this, but one of my favorite practices is just custom games with AI, right? Just me alone, just kind of really trying to get a feel for my build and um my ideas about where I want to take the game and how I want the game to progress. Because I think having a plan, especially if you're anxious, having a plan goes a long way. Even if it's not a very good plan, having any plan is infinitely better than having no plan and just being like, well, I'm gonna go in the game and whatever. Who knows? I think that's a method that like you're just kind of setting yourself up to like have whatever happen to you. And I think having a plan allows you to be like, okay, this is what I want to do. Maybe I will be able to do it, right? And I'm gonna do a two base timing with this unit comp, right? And even just having that idea, even if the game completely takes a left turn and goes in a completely different direction, you can still start the game with that. And again, I think that that does a lot for getting you in the rhythm of just getting games and games and games. Um, One of the freeing things that I have realized after playing many games is that the loss sometimes just happens. Like
It really does, yeah.
it almost has nothing to do with how you're playing, right? Like it does, but at the same time it doesn't, right? And you'll like I also remember this too a lot in like, in gold and plat and stuff where it's like I would win games uh just just because I just because of what my opponent chose to do to me. And I'm like, okay, like I guess I win. Like I win basically doing nothing, right? Like and you got to kind of experience those, with a couple repetitions before you kind of can learn to be okay with it, right? And like
Yeah.
again, there's still a lot of um places to improve and places to think about, but um there's a certain comfort I have too, and I think the other thing that I've realized is that my MMR is going to go up and down, right? And one of the things I remember back when I was starting out and starting to rank up is that my ladder anxiety was directly related to where my MMR was, right? So if my MMR was good, I did not want to touch it. I did
Oh, yeah.
not I did not I am a gold 1 player now. Like it's one of these things where it's like, yeah, I'm identifying myself as a gold 1 player. I can't go back down. I can't go back there. But these days I don't care. I don't care. It's gonna go down. I'm gonna have some bad days. It's gonna go down a lot, maybe, you know. Um, but I remember when I got to like I just broke into platinum and I was like, hell yeah, I'm plat 3. And then that that pesky red triangle shows up and I'm like, I'm all of a sudden I am just overwhelmed with like anxiety about the next game, right? And the next game, you don't even know what it is, right? But the maybe this is just reads into my ego a lot, but the fear of dropping back down to gold from like just grazing platinum to me was like very overwhelming and certainly uh something that affected how much I would queue or how much you know stamina I had for games, right? And you know it's one of these things where you gotta, I don't know, I've just learned to be very loose and free with my MMR, and it's gonna be there. It'll still be there. I'm still the same person. Whether or not that number goes up and down a couple hundred, I'll get over it.
Yeah, you actually raised a couple of interesting points. For starters, I still kind of get anxiety about that little number sometimes.
Oh yeah,
It it's not nearly as bad as when like I first started playing and I got into, like gold 1. I'm just like I cannot lose a game or I'm going back to silver and I'm never going to be accomplished in this game,
yeah,
which, that's it's a bad claim. It's a very bad claim.
yeah,
And recently I finally got back up to 3.7 after the MMR shift. And I was just like there's like a little voice in my head that was just like you can't mess this up. You can't mess this up.
yeah, yeah.
And I
Well,
mean,
and I think
I did go and mess it up. I did.
yeah, yeah. I think as StarCraft players too, there's a lot of pride. There's a lot of pride when you get to a certain rank because we're also big tryhards and like as a community, we're all like, yeah, it's a hard game. Like, this MMR is it's my blood, sweat, and tears in this MMR kind of thing. And I certainly feel that. I started the How's the Ladder section talking about my MMR, so like I am not immune. Despite the fact I kind of don't care, I still care a lot. So like I can't ever ignore it, but it's just not as loud as it was. But yeah, it's still definitely there. But yeah, man, that triangle, man. Let's get rid of that triangle. Let's patch it out. I don't, whatever.
Yeah, don't remind me that I'm playing poorly right now. But I
I
mean,
still remember seeing that triangle for the first time and hovering over it and being like, what? What?
yeah.
We don't need it. We don't need it. It's 2021. We don't need it.
Well, here's another thing is that your MMR this second is not it's not a perfect reflection of who you are as a StarCraft person. So I used to put a lot of pride in my MMR. Um, but I if I go into a tournament nowadays, like I can make a Diamond 1 player sweat. I've made Masters 3 players sweat. Like I've beaten Diamond 1 players before, but if I go onto ladder, there's a couple of times where I'm going to get beat by a Plat 1 guy. It's not often, but it happens.
Sure.
They do something that's kind of like off the rails or, very innovative. And it's just like, well, I got caught off guard. GG. So your exact MMR number is not a good reflection of where you stand on the StarCraft II ladder. It's a good representation of where you currently stand in this very second, but you can't give into like this, oh, I'm 3.4 now. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I was 3.9 2 weeks ago. It's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, you have a peak of 3.9. You can call yourself a 3.9 player even if your MMR reflects currently that you're 3.4. You had a series of bad days. You might have, just come back to StarCraft 2. Like you can't let that little number make you fearful of, what's going to come because it's like that's going to get into your head and, that's going to give you more anxiety because you go into the next game it's just like I can't lose any more MMR or I'm going to be demoted next season. Like,
Yeah.
so what? You get demoted, then you practice on some of your mechanics and then you go back up to where you were. It's like it's a constant ebb and flow with a general trend of going upwards. That's what you need to be worried about.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think sometimes it's also like a cultural thing in our community too, where it's like this is like a Twitch chat thing, but it's like, hey man, I'm 3.2 and you're 2.8, so I can tell you everything you need to do. And it's like,
Oh.
people are like, people like weigh themselves on their game knowledge based on their MMR, but it's like there's a lot to it, and like you can't really live and die by it. Um, and everyone's just trying to, everyone wants to flex their MMR. I don't blame them. I like to flex my MMR, but it's just a piece of the puzzle of me as a player, right? And y- I've been 3-6 many, many times over and over and over again. But every time I've been 3-6, I've been a better player, right? Like I've been much better at many things. This is the MMR episode that we'll definitely get to eventually.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
so to
this
like,
was sort of related.
yeah, I mean, it definitely plays into the anxiety stuff because, it certainly affected me during my most anxious periods of playing this game. Um, but to kind of pull it back, what would you what would you tell new players who are really struggling with ladder anxiety? Do you have any tips?
The biggest thing I would tell them is it's like you said earlier. Like the biggest thing I would tell them is to go in with a plan, and it doesn't have to be something specific like with what we work with, like because we have a set for every matchup in every situation. Like just max out. Just keep your supply blocks below a minute. Make 75 workers. Just something very simple. Just give yourself a small goal to kind of work towards.
Yeah,
Um, that does kind of reduce the anxiety, like even if you lose, like you still have another goal that you can look at. But I would tell them to watch, watch other people play StarCraft a lot. Like you kind of like if you watch somebody else who's just kind of like queuing up games and you kind of like get a sense of like, okay, so they're doing this at this time, you kind of go into your own games with a little bit of confidence. Like I know every time I watch Hero Marine, I like immediately want to queue ladder because I'm just like, oh, why didn't I think of that? And then get
yeah,
rolled by a
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Protoss player.
Yeah. Well, and I think feeling inspired is a good way to go into it, and
Oh,
and
absolutely.
feeling optimistic in that way, or feeling like, this is what I want to play. I also think this is something that just popped into my head, but there's, like, I don't know what it is, but when you're a beginner player and you get that first big W, that
Hmm.
first big win. Oh my God. I rode that high for like a week.
Yeah.
Like it is tremendous when you like fully beat someone, you know? Because like I still remember being down in gold and silver. It's like cheese, 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 some weird thing, and then some straight up guy, and then and it's like it's very overwhelming and nothing makes sense. But when I got that first win, like I took a lot of damage to like a dumb one base opener or something like that. I don't know, but I remember I pulled through. I made a crap ton of drones, and I just macroed it out and steamrolled him after. That win like did so much for me, just as far as anxiety goes, but it took me a while to get there. Like it wasn't even in the first like week or two I was playing that I got a win like that. You know, it took more time than that for me to get there and for me to feel like, oh, I'm capable of amazing things in this game. So, even if you're struggling on the way back, I think it's like, you can do it, man. You can get that big win and it'll feel pretty nice. I guarantee it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Um, there's one other thing that I wanted to a little bit of advice that I wanted to give, but I can't remember it. What exactly would you tell people though?
So, the thing that I think of for this, especially if like if the person asking me has determined that like the anxiety is like the biggest issue, like this unknown sort of thing, or just not knowing what's happening, the thing I would say is to set a goal that is just play 5 games, right? Like that's it. You know, you don't have to win them. You don't even have to have a plan in those games necessarily. It helps because we just talked about that. But like, you don't even have to. You don't even have to care about what happens in these games, right? The important thing is that you play 4 games, right? If you play 4 games, good job. You hit the goal because I think just getting those repetitions in really helps. And this is a whole nother goal setting thing, which we could probably do a whole nother episode about. But like, you got to set the goal at like a reasonable level, right? So, not like play 20 games this weekend. No, no, no. Just keep it low, keep it reasonable. But have the goal be based on the amount of games you queue into, right? You still might get cannon rushed for 4 games in a row. That's okay. It might happen, but at the end of the day, you'll still be able to kind of get into that practice of getting those repetitions and getting those games in. Um, because again, the more games you get exposed to, the more you'll be like, oh, like bunch of weird shit can happen. Like it just, I don't know. It's one thing to watch it and see that games can play out in a million different ways, but it's a very different thing to click that unknown opponent button and experience a game in a million different ways yourself and see how, you enjoy that or not even.
Yeah, that's also another thing I thought about when you mentioned cannon rushes is, sometimes it helps to do silly stuff of your own. Like, I know anytime I'm feeling a little bit anxious about, queuing up Terran, well, one thing I used to do is actually pull up another account that I had where I would pick 2 units at random and I would run with it. Like, it could be any 2 units.
Yeah,
I've had Raven Banshee before. That was a
sure.
mess. But, just go out and do some silly stuff, off race, do a 12 pool, do a cannon
Yeah,
rush to
yeah,
Broodlords. Like, do some stuff that's going to kind of stuff that will kind of make you sit there and think, wow, that was really stupid. Let's
yeah,
do it again.
yeah. Yeah. Well, this is another thing that I kind of thought of when I was starting out, or like when I was just like, I don't know, it was a time where I felt like I was just dying to everything, like every attack just killed me, and every attack I overreacted to, and I didn't have the eco. So I made my goal to be uh, just die from making too many drones, right? That was my whole goal. My whole goal was to over drone and die. So so the amazing thing is that when I had that goal, sometimes I would have a huge economy and I wouldn't die. because I would be able to produce a lot. But I would go in being like, I'm just gonna make as many drones as I can. If they if they kill me because of the timing, well, at least I'm gonna die with three bases beautifully saturated. Like
Yeah.
and it's so far from picking a winning goal that it really just helped you get in it, and it helped a lot. I'll give you that.
Yeah, it's yeah, stuff like that really does help a lot. It lowers your anxiety. You have a little bit of fun. Um, yeah, it really genuinely does help. If you're struggling with ladder anxiety, just do something weird. Do anything weird. As long as you're pressing the ranked button and just doing something, like, you're doing good.
Yeah, totally. I salute the ladder heroes who are listening, or the aspiring ladder heroes who are listening as well, um, because it is scary. Like it's not it's not scary, but it takes a lot of work sometimes. But I promise it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. Do you want to start wrap up procedures here?
Yeah, I think so. I hope we covered a lot of bases here and got some people to think about their anxieties and maybe some tools to help with that.
Yeah, I feel like we covered a lot of topics here, and I'm super happy that we actually got to talk about, something that still affects some of us. It's
Oh
a
yeah.
it's a great topic to talk about. So again, I could not do this show without Captain Happa. He is such a fantastic person. Everybody go give Dan a follow on Twitter, twitch.tv/Captain Happa. He is a fantastic person. I, of course, have been Lord Cranial. You can follow me there on Twitter. You should already be here on Twitch. I'm just saying. And we actually have exciting news because we now have Apple Podcast. It's that first link there at the top. Go and give us a rating, give us a review, tell us if you liked it. The reviews and follows, they really help out a lot in getting a new podcast off the grounds, and we'd really appreciate it if you could you know, just come on by. So Dan, do you have any parting thoughts or things that you've been working on?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I'm streaming on Twitch pretty consistently. I also have a YouTube channel that is still very young and growing, but it's a lot of the things so here's the plan. I plan to put a lot of the things that I say on stream over and over again. It's just I'm going to put them in edited, more digestible pieces. But it's a lot of mentality improvement, StarCraft related things, very much in the vein of this. But that's just getting rolling here. But for the most part, you can check out my Twitch and you can follow me on Twitter. Those are probably the best. But yeah, man, I love doing this with you. It's a good time. I like these discussions, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always as always a fantastic pleasure to have you on, man. So, I mean, without further ado, we're gonna go ahead and call it a night. I'll find somebody for us to host. I hope you guys had a wonderful time, learned a little bit about us, and yeah, just keep working the ladder, and like us, maybe one day, or we'll work on an outro. We'll work on an
Good luck, have fun out there.
outro. There you go. There we go. All right, everybody, take care.